Well, hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another live stream to answer your questions and church security, church safety, and security related questions. A lot to talk about this week. We've got a lot of questions, and I've got Buddy here joining me today. How are you, Buddy?
Life's good, man.
So I'm so glad you're here. You're here from the shop, I
Yep.
see.
Yeah, they're setting up for Bible school at church, so I can't use that backdrop up there this week. Next week, that'll be real interesting on Tuesday night.
Nice. Nice. All right. Well, let's get right into some questions then, buddy. We've got, as we're waiting for people to come in here, we have got, first thing I wanted to talk about was this discussion from the repo guy this week. Or actually, it's been about 8-9 days ago that we talked about this. I posted this, and I'm telling you, as the channel grows, and I love having everybody participate. As the channel grows, man, we get some seriously difficult customers on here sometimes, but then we also just get a ton of discussion and things. In this one, this is plain and simple a property crime, and if it was a crime, as we talked about, and anybody can go back and watch it, and you'll see this picture on YouTube. And this was a property crime here, but I can't believe how many people were talking about this and forgetting the fact that it's not a life or death situation. And this guy's pulling a gun. This is a security volunteer from a church, and he's pulling a gun on somebody over. It's a repo person, repo in a car. And it turns out it's the wrong car. So in the story, but we've got people, JP Saverance, says, do you really think talking to this guy would have stopped him from stealing the car? Because my position was, we need to bring out our verbal skills and talk about things. That should be the first thing we do. We don't want to forget we're trying to create a warm and welcoming environment for people firsthand. I mean, like I mentioned in the video, we even want this repo guy to come to our church. We should be trying to be warm and welcoming. He's got a job to do. And so many people were discussing this. Another comment was, trying to talk to a guy stealing a car, really. And we got to remember, first of all, he was doing his job. Second of all, even if he was stealing a car, we're not talking about a life or death situation here. We're talking about property. And I don't care what state you're in, what country you're in. Generally, most places that I know of, property crime does not equal using force against someone like a gun, using deadly force. So it's something I want to make sure that we're continuing to talk about, and in fact, there was some discussion, that the repo guy made a mistake. And my position is it possible that he, if we would have been talking with him instead of giving him guff and pulling our gun out and that kind of stuff, would he been able to confirm that that wasn't his car that he was looking for, that he was looking to repossess? So I'm still under the impression and still taking the position that verbal skills would have been a lot better in this situation. Bringing those out, be warm and welcoming. Let's talk about it. Let's not pull our gun in a property type situation. What do you think, buddy? Any thoughts?
Obviously, we don't need to be pulling our guns on this. I agree with you on that. It's not necessary to do that. And the verbal skills are absolutely critical. This situation was something that most of us don't think of is let's check the paperwork against the VIN of the car and make sure that's the correct vehicle. If it's not, then he needs to go on his way. It might even be a situation where we need to call PD and get them involved, have them check that out. We certainly don't need to be pulling a firearm on somebody.
And especially as soon as we figure out this is a repo guy, we may not like repo people. I actually did a little bit of repo work right out of high school. And, and I know we don't like repo folks, but the reality is they're doing a job, and in most states, they have the right to even come on premises open to the public, which is your church parking lot, to repo a car. So, it really our verbal skills here, warm and welcoming. I don't know why the firearm came out, but it did. And I see these stories, and it shocks me every once in a while. So when this
Yeah,
kind of stuff happens.
Joe, I think some of us would need to consider about going to security training and learning what we can and can't do as a security officer, because that's what we are. We're
Yeah.
security officers, and that training would be beneficial to us if we get into situations like that. If you're in a crime-ridden area, especially, you need to be safe and know what you can and cannot do, what
Yeah, for sure.
your legal responsibilities are.
For sure. Yeah. All right, buddy. Everybody, as you're coming in here, if you have a question for us, I see several people jumping in. Just leave a comment for us, and we will answer your questions. So just say hello to us in the comments. Tell us where you're watching from. And if you have a question or something, let us know, because that's what we're here for, is to talk about some things on our mind, but also answer your questions. And we've got a good range of experience between the two of us to at least give you some decent opinions. So, buddy, what do you got? Let's see. We got another question here. Brian from, let's see, from on YouTube sent us a question. I'm wanting to purchase some radios for our church security team, but my question is, have you ever noticed any interference with the church sound system when keying up the radio, or vice versa? Any interference with the radio system? What's your experience with that, buddy?
I haven't experienced any interference. We've used your typical walkie-talkie that you go get at the box store or something, and that has not interfered. We do get interference from other people, but not interfering with our service as far as the sound system and those kind of things. We just purchased MERS radios, and those are on 5 different FCC frequencies, and those certainly do not interfere at all.
Yeah.
And we use them frequently. The the Zello might be something that would be beneficial. I don't think would interfere because it's using telephones, and I'm not real familiar with that. We did look at it, but I just couldn't get everybody to buy into it. So that's
Yes.
why we're using that.
And we did talk about that in the church security community, our little community that we have. I think Ted in there brought that up, that about the Zello, and we're going to look at that Zello stuff just a little bit more, because it sounds like a good option. That's a great thought there. So, and I've never had any issue. We had one time 5-6 years ago, we had this. I think somebody hit their squelch button when they were standing up front, and that caused a little bit of interference. And but that was not interference with the system. That was just an audible sound in the auditorium. So, hello, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Kansas. Thanks everybody that's joining us. It's great to have you here this morning. Send us your questions if you have any. Anything else on the radios, buddy?
No, I think it's pretty simple. Radios today and the electronics that we're using in our sound systems, they don't get that interference. I haven't experienced that in several years.
Yeah. I'm the same way. And we use the MERS radios, the Redivus RTV 27Vs, I think, are the ones that we use, and great little radios. I love those little radios. So, and we've had them now for, I think, going on about 3 years, and they're real hardcore. So, okay, our next question. And I got the lawnmowers out here this morning. All of a sudden, landscapers decided to show up. And Buddy's got chickens in the background. So,
I do.
Buddy, Soldeo Musical. He's been with us a long time, one of our long-term followers. Churches love to feel like they have an open door policy. Does your home have such a policy, or your business, your local bank, Costco, you know, is it really an open door policy? They seem to prepare for the worst while we swing open our doors wide open to any and everyone and hope for the best. What are your thoughts on that, buddy? Because that is a big deal. I mean, we pride ourselves, our church is welcoming everyone, traditionally welcoming anyone in. But what are your thoughts on that?
I agree with you that, and this is an issue that I've had at another church that I was at, that had somebody had some mental issues and they wouldn't take their medications and those kind of things. And we try to help them out and get them hooked up with the doctors and the right people with the social services aspect and help those folks out. But you've got to pick up on that stuff before it starts happening. You pick up a lot of it in the parking lot. And, somebody looks suspicious. Even in department stores, they know who the trouble is. They know the body signs and the signals, the way they act, the way they look around, the way they do surveillance. Most of us will not notice that, especially in church, because we're not trained for that, and we need to be a little more attentive to that surveillance issue. And if there's someone that is suspicious, just shake their hand and get to know them. Kind of pat them down at 3 o'clock when you're saying hello, and see if they're armed. Look at what's their attitude. Look at their eyes and see if they're looking around. If they're trying to ignore you. If they're trying to stay busy, and if they don't know where they're going, help them out. Get them familiar with the people in the church. I've even got some folks on my greeting team that I could call on that are really great with folks, and let them spend time with them. Then I'll just sit back and observe and see what goes on. And that really helps out a lot. It keeps down a lot of trouble. And by doing that, we haven't had any situations at our church in probably 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you know, that is what I always say. That's the awesome thing about being on the security team is you're watching people and talking to them, and the ones that you feel like need your attention, you go up and be warm and welcoming and friendly. You're screening them as a security person at the same time that you're loving on them as a church person. So it's one of the few ministries that really we can do that kind of stuff. So that's awesome. So and we have the issue is, and we just have to talk to our leadership. The issue is, we can be a warm and welcoming environment and have open door policy, but then be ready to screen somebody out for the good of the folks so that their service isn't interrupted, that kind of thing. So we have the right to refuse service. The issue is is your leadership okay with that? Because that's the deal is can we kick somebody out if we feel like they're going to interfere with the service, or because of mental health issues, or they're maybe under the influence of something. And that just takes a quick conversation with your leadership on, is that going to be okay if these kind of things happen? So we have the right to refuse service, just like any other business or any other place. So anything else on that?
No, I think it's pretty well. Did good.
We got people from Colorado, Idaho jumping in here. It's great to have all of you here. GP asks, we were talking about the radios. Here's the Redivus. Let me get on a different screen here. Here's the Redivus RT27 that we use. And small, you can see in the palm of my hand, it fits real well. The earpieces that we use are the Secret Service type. GP's asking about that. So it just plugs into the radio, and then you have your Secret Service setup here where you have your mic. We wear them right here on our front, and then you've got the earpiece. And I know some people don't care for these Secret Service looking earpieces things, but these come with the radio, the Redivus. If you buy the kit, I bought mine on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description. If you scroll down, I'll put a link down there for you to find those. So, and they've been working great for us. So, do you use the earpieces, buddy?
I do, because I'm a lead person on the team. The problem that I have with that radio, with hearing anyway, is I play bass in a worship band. And when I'm up on stage and we're playing, the music's pretty loud, I can't hear any communication. So I've got some other people that I'm going to have to assign to take over that role while I'm up there playing with the music with the worship team.
Gotcha.
But that was the only issue that I've ever had with it. The radios have worked fine. We go between buildings. We've got probably 50 to 100 yards that we have to cover between buildings sometimes. And it's worked beautiful.
Nice.
I haven't had any problems at all.
Nice. All right. We've got Rapper in the End Time watching from Toronto, Canada. I did not know you were from Canada. Rapper's been in here in our group or in our YouTube stuff for a long time now. So I did not realize you were from Canada. That's awesome. I'm glad you're watching today. Let's take a look at the next question here we've got, and make sure leave your questions in the comments if you have one, and I'll try to make sure and catch those. So our next question here is from Tennessee Smokey. Concerned that we continue to ramp up our security posture at the churches, we may invite escalation of threats. What is the appropriate church security sweet spot in terms of deterrence of criminal activity? You know, there and Tennessee is mentioning that, you know, there's no stronger preventative measure than off-duty uniformed police officer, and that, you know, that's true. If you've got the ability to hire someone, then hire an off-duty police officer and have a patrol car parked out in the parking lot. That is great. And even a uniformed security officer, that's great as well. And it starts to infringe on the warm and welcoming, maybe somebody might say, but I think today, kind of like Soledad mentioned, you know, we kind of have to watch who's coming in, and we kind of have to pay attention to that stuff, but we need preventative measures. Now, I think just having somebody walking around out front, or two people walking around out front, is a good deterrence. If we go back to April of last year, the church school shooting, that person wrote in their log that they didn't go to one place, their little kill manifesto. They didn't go to one place because there was security there. And so they went to a different place. Now, these were schools, but similar observations that just having people out walking around. Now, we can't, you know, I tend to be a smaller church, and so we can't always just have 2 or 3 people walking around out front. So we have one at all times at the front doors, but we'll send 2 or 3 people out there, and we'll visit and walk around a little bit, and then we'll come back in and do some of our other duties. And then those 2 extra people will go back out there after they help with some other stuff and walk around again out front, so that we're being seen. And we especially try to do that as people are coming in. So, you know, it's just about trying to work things out to where we're seen and do the best job that we can, but making sure that we have somebody posted at the front door that's being seen. And our folks just have a lanyard flopping around on their regular clothes, but that little white lanyard, that little white name tag is, you know, shows up to people that are looking to see if you have official folks hanging out there. Buddy, how about any other thoughts on that?
The other thing that we just started doing was carrying a radio with us when we're out there on patrol, so we can communicate back with the person on the camera. That guy on the camera serves as a dispatch, kind of directs people for us. And so the folks that are out there patrolling, both of them have a radio with them, so they can communicate back inside, or even if they get separated and they need help, they can communicate.
Nice. Hello to Virginia. I see you popping in there, Melvin. Buddy, how about you take the next one from the video shootings at 3 churches and a police station in Russia. So that was quite the ordeal a few weeks ago. What can we do to be prepared for something like that? I mean, that was just multiple people, automatic weapons or semi-auto weapons, and you know, even some Molotov cocktails and stuff. What can we do? What are your thoughts?
I go back to the biggest thing we can do is make a presence in the parking lot. It's difficult to fight against automatic weapons, semi-automatic weapons, or the Molotov cocktails. But there's a whole lot more to this story than just that, because this was an incident that was coordinated, and they attacked these places at the same time. When you do that, what you're trying to do is to put fear into people and get them to back off, make people afraid and unsure, where they can't make good and wise decisions. And so, in order to do that and have those coordinated efforts on those fires and those attacks on the churches, they have to do a lot of surveillance. And that surveillance is something that we just do not take advantage of out in the parking lot. We don't see it. A lot of times they could be sitting off property. They could be driving through slowly, different times of service and through the week. Um, Come inside and look around, see where the security cameras are at, how many people are out there in the lobby, how many security people they are. They can spot security people real quick because that's what they're trained to do. And so they're looking for those obstructions that they're going to have. And if we can do anything to mess up their plan, we win. But if we're not being observant about people surveilling our facility, even if it's off campus or if it's on campus, we need to document what we see. And if it's something that's consistent, we need to report that to the authorities. And that will help trend that stuff down. It's a tragedy to see what all happened, because there were not only attacks with the bombs and the guns, but there were also attacks with knives. And so there's a lot there that can be really dangerous and harmful to the church, especially the leadership. And we need to be attentive to any type of surveillance activity that takes place outside or inside our church. You get a group of people walking in the church and they separate when they come in and go to different parts of the church. That's a big warning sign. Keep an eye on those folks. So I think that's something we need to do, is just make a huge presence. As if what you can. Sometimes we don't have enough staff to do that, but make it all the presence that you can out there, and watch for surveillance activities.
Yeah. And pull an usher, pull somebody else to go out and stand out front with you for a couple minutes, that kind of thing. So, and if we really narrow it down, I see Tim is asking about group threats. It's really narrow it down to what we talk about, as well as, what are these new things that we might start seeing if you look at these threats overseas. These kind of things, as groups that are coming to the U.S. and Canada and other places, they really, we start looking at group threats, multiple numbers of people. We start looking at firearms that they're using, which is, we're used to the lone wolf that comes in with one gun or one handgun, but these people may have multiple semi-auto weapons and lots of firepower. And we also have to look at the fire. They tend to use fire a little bit more if we look overseas. And again, these people are coming to our areas in Canada and the US. And so, what are we going to do to prepare for those? And you have to decide those things. So for me, it's making sure I've got more fire extinguishers up front, or make sure that I have one up front that's real close in case something like that happens. And we also have to talk about knives. We tend to be seeing more knife attacks these days. So that's the way we can really get focused, like Buddy's saying, get our presence as big as we can get it, which, maybe only one, like Tim is saying in the comments. What do you do with one security person? Just make sure that security person's being seen out front with that lanyard dangling, is my opinion. We don't have to have a bright yellow security shirt that says security. That's not necessarily warm and welcoming, but we can have a lanyard flopping. If people are surveilling us, like Buddy's talking about, they're going to see those kind of things. They're paying attention to that kind of stuff, and that's what they're looking for. So, and then start training yourself or your team on these other facts that we see happening. And don't forget, it's not likely to come to your church, but we want to be prepared for these kind of things and be getting our ducks in a row, if so to speak, for these kind of things that they might do. So, Jason, I see your kind of a question in there. What tips? Give me some specific questions. I'm not following completely what you got going on there. I apologize for that. Okay, Buddy, what do we got going on here for questions? we've had a church security team at our church, but our team leader resigned, and we are needing a new leader. How do I organize this? Any thoughts, buddy? A new team leader thrown into it, it sounds like.
I think he just answered his own question. How do I approach that? When you do that, you're taking a leadership role. And, some of that, you have to have a passion for this. It sounds like you do have a passion. And you might be the key person now. You can learn from a previous leader and pick up on other stuff we see a lot of comments here in our group, folks supporting one another, giving suggestions, and the guys are willing to help out one another and developing teams and what you can look for, the people to look for, and how they go about doing it. Personally, we just kind of let God lead us to people. We've got a good director for our security system and our safety group, our guest services. And he just allows me to go in there and manage and help him out because he's got so much on his plate. But it sounds like you're the man, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you just got to go one step at a time, really. We've all been there. And I'm not one to throw. We put together resources for you. We've got a training, a leader leading a church security program. We've got that training. I've got the banner going across on the church security community. These are all things that we charge a little bit for, but they are great. That community is just on fire with people in there talking about what they do in this situation, what they do in that situation. So it's a great resource as a new leader to jump in there, and you can join for like 3 months at a time. Now, that said, I hate throwing the commercial stuff at you, but we put it together for you. And that's what I would recommend. There's other channels out here that are promoting other things. Look around, and you've got the Church Security Answer Man right here. We've got all kinds of free videos and stuff that you just look through our videos, find stuff, have a training. That's what I would suggest, is that you have a meeting and have a training with whatever people you have. If you just have a couple people, let's get together and have a training. And that starts your leadership process where you're saying, I'm organizing a meeting. Let's get together and talk. And then you can show one of our free videos right here off the Church Security Answer Man to get you kicked off and to get you some directions going. So what do we got here? Dennis.
Joe, Ted just jumped in here and sent us a note that he's having problems getting logged in with the internet issues that are going on worldwide right now. That might be a difficulty. So just understand that. And Joe and I we had to hook up a couple of times in order to make connections. So just be aware of that. And it's probably a worldwide situation, not just this system.
Yeah, that's a great point. In fact, I had to cancel an online meeting the other day because of the internet was down. It was during a storm, but it was just down. So things happen. Unfortunately, it's great tools. I love the tools, but sometimes they're just not very friendly. Dennis talks about a lot of stuff here. They've got a great, dedicated, and friendly team. They're visible. Their communication, and they've got other people involved, as greeters and that kind of stuff, or their team is working as greeters, and don't forget that when we talk about, Buddy talks about watching out in the parking lot and all of those kind of things. Don't forget, we at our church, we train our greeters, we train our ushers, we train everyone in our security principles. And we don't train them in everything. There's a few things that we hold back, because some of the stuff might scare them, those kind of things, or, the information's not pertinent. It's what we need to watch for. But we do train them in a lot of things of what to look for and how to communicate with us and how to help us call 911, those kind of things. So all of those people that might be up front or might be milling around that work as volunteers on your different teams, train them. And I try to do a training even with the worship team every so often to try to tell them what they would do if we did have an active violent situation, how to get down, where to hide, where to run, all of those kind of things. So we don't have to make a huge deal out of it, but we can go around and kind of add these people to our base of knowledge and help them get to know what we've got pardon me, what we've got going on. Next question here. We'll keep moving on, so we're running already a half hour. This is great. Is it ever okay to physically eject someone? For example, they're yelling during the service, a person who will not otherwise leave. And, sometimes you just have to do that. It's a rare occurrence. From my experience and from studies, from statistics, most people, if you ask them to leave, they will comply, especially if you screen them out. You get a couple people standing around them and you screen them out and ask them to leave, they will generally leave. But, we're in a day and age of being rebellious. And so, and it's kind of okay to resist authority these days. And so you might have to grab an arm or those kind of things. Is it okay to physically remove them? That's a discussion you have to have. Your leadership should be involved in that. But here's the other thing I always want to mention, because we take on liability when we start grabbing somebody's arm and pulling them, or, knotting them up and tossing them around kind of thing. We're taking on a lot of liability for ourselves in the church. So is it possible that we can just call the police? And I don't know each of your situations in Canada and Kansas and Idaho where you're all watching from, but I can say, is it possible we could wait a couple minutes and wait for the police to show up and let them take care of that situation for us? If not, you folks have to decide at what point are you going to remove somebody, and how are you going to remove them? Because it is certainly possible. You have the right to refuse service. They're probably not going to come back again. In fact, if they were interrupting the service, you probably hope they don't come back again. But there's still somebody that we want to reach. But the reality is we're probably going to be turning them off, and we're going to be sending them out the door. And but we might hurt them in the process, or they might claim they were hurt. So that's the big issue. Any other thoughts on that, buddy?
Yeah, just simply tell them, hey, when you walk up to them, say you need to leave. The police are on their way. That typically will encourage them. Hi there, I got the grandkids running in here. That typically will encourage them to follow you. Then another thing that I've learned is just to simply ask them, hey, tell them hi. Hey, okay. Is that if you just simply ask them, hey, follow me. I've got an idea. I want you to follow me, and turn around and walk away. They will typically follow you right out wherever you go, wherever you choose to take them. And that's worked out real well for me. I've never had someone say no. They've always followed.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what I find as well. People are pretty cooperative. They want to say their thing, but they're not here to be violent. They just want to speak to your congregation or do their little interruption thing that they see is okay in their world. Melvin asks, he's got a discussion. We don't have any identification except radios. How important is it that rather than just, how is it important, I guess, is it to be identified rather than just trying to blend in? And, there's all kinds of different opinions on that. My opinion is something balanced. And I think Buddy does the same thing, where we wear a name tag lanyard that flops around and it says guest services on it. And that's what we're called, is guest services, but we're really security. And so, but that name tag flopping around on a lanyard, and we get the breakaway one, so that if somebody grabbed the lanyard and wanted to fight with you, then it just pops off. But that lanyard gives you a little bit of identity, but it's warm and welcoming. It's balanced by not saying security on it. It says guest services. That's my opinion. And so that, that gives you a little bit of identification. If you're out walking around out front, somebody knows you're connected with the church. And if there's a couple of you out front and you both have those lanyards flopping around, it kind of sees, there's kind of uniformity there. And people can kind of see, okay, there's a couple people that are somewhat attached or official with the church that are out there walking around, and you're a go-to person as well. So I think a little bit of identity, that's my opinion, is important. So, but I know a lot of folks that like to be just dressed in normal clothes and not identified. And I think that's a choice. Anything else on that, buddy?
I agree with you 100%. The guest services badges are wonderful because it's a warm and welcoming, but you're also there to do your job is to keep the people in the property safe. It works out beautiful for us. Even our greeters have the guest services. It goes a motorcycle. Guest services has that. I mean, our greeters wear the guest services badge also, so there's several people using it, not just the security folks.
Gotcha. Tim also asked in the chat, I know we are not police, but what's your take on the whole citizens arrest thing? And you know, the reality is you need to brush up on that but really in my opinion, we're detaining or holding on to folks or asking them to leave. You know, the citizen's arrest is there for many of us, and I don't know each of your state's positions or even your cities or locations positions on the citizen arrest concept. But many of us, if we see a crime in progress, then we have the right to detain someone, and that's that citizen's arrest and hold on to them. But, you know, really, we're trying to detain someone. The last person that I called the police on, I just stood and talked to them, but they were a bit out of control in the parking lot. So I stood. Sure, I could have held him down or I could have grabbed a hold of his arm or something like that. But instead, I had a greeter call the police. And as the police were arriving, I just stood and tried to calmly talk to him and waited for the police to arrive. So it's generally not something that we have to hold on to them, even if they're going to leave. If they're leaving, that's what we generally want them to do. So we can follow them at a safe distance or whatever it is, but we'd let them go. We want them to go. We don't have to generally detain somebody unless it's for some kind of crime that we really feel like we've got to detain them. Anything else, buddy, on that different perspective?
The only thing I would do is just the minute we see something unusual, disturbance, is simply call the police and let the PD handle it, and let the people know, hey, the law enforcement's on their way, and that typically will help calm them down a little bit and help that situation.
Yeah, for sure. The police are a great resource. I know some of you, the police can take a while to get there, but it's as often and as soon as we can turn things over to the police, they're a great resource for us to help us with the liability and help us control somebody. As soon as we touch somebody, as soon as we get too involved with them, then we could take a chance of them claiming that we hurt them or something and come back to us. Let's see what else we got here. Bob, that's great. Using the word staff. Hey, I like that. Whatever you can use, the warmer and more friendlier, then the better, I think. Melvin says that his ushers and greeters wear name tags, but the security apparently does not. So great. All right. Our next question here comes back from Tennessee Smokey again. I realize that you're not a lawyer, Joe, but I have a legal question. Are citizens allowed to use non-lethal weapons such as a pepper gel spray to defend themselves? How does this relate to serving as a volunteer on a church security and safety team? And, you know, can we use that stuff? We can certainly use tools to defend ourselves in most regions. And yeah, again, I'm not a lawyer, so my opinion is, though, that most of us can use a gel to defend ourselves. And and that's a great tool. But, you know, we can't forget all the other steps to that. And, you know, we can be sued for anything. But the reality is, you know, you got to have training on that and how to use it. And generally, the adopted principle is that you got to be sprayed with it so that you know the effects in case you're ever asked in court and those kind of things. So, but you can adopt whatever policy you want, but we generally need some kind of training. And then that training needs to come from somebody who has a foundation for that training. They're kind of an expert. And then that training has to be done every so often. So that tends to be why you know, I tend to shy away from getting a lot of extra tools because of all the training that goes along with them. And it's not just, when I was in law enforcement, it seemed like we were training every month because we had all these tools and we had to train yearly on the tools and you had to get certified so it's just like all the time we're doing training on this stuff if we're trying to keep up and manage our liabilities. So I'm all for the gel stuff. And we just talked about some gel here a few months ago with Kurt from ungun.com. And it's a great gel. It doesn't fog the whole church kind of thing. It just pretty much focuses on that person where you sprayed and doesn't have a lot of cast off issues. But we still got to remember the liabilities. So anything else on that, buddy?
And that gel that Joe's talking about is Presidia gel. And they also have because when you use something like that, you have to be able to triage whoever you used it on. And they have a product that they can use to triage folks, and it works really quickly. So it's something to look into. And as far as extra tools, I stay away from them also. Just use the verbal skills and just the presence has worked best for us.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and Bob in the chat, he mentions that, you got to know your state's use of force continuum plus the training. And he's right. There's all kinds of things that go with training. You got to know use of force. You got to know the tool that you're using, how to use it, how not to use it. There's a lot to these extra tools when I'm all about how can we just control and contain this situation, protect our people first, which don't forget sometimes in these, I want to always remind us, sometimes in these scenarios that we're thinking about or these situations that happen, the best thing to do may be to ask your congregation to leave while you hold this person or while you're dealing with this person and waiting for the police. Maybe if they have a big stick that could hurt somebody or a knife, do we have to take action right now, or could we just ask the congregation to step back or go into another room and while we wait for the police to show up so nobody else is in danger or nobody else is possibly having an issue? So thanks for sharing that. Let's see here, buddy. How do eyeglasses affect the gel's effectiveness? Have you used this gel yet?
I haven't used a gel, but I would imagine that it's going to, if you get it on the forehead or around the eyes, it's going to run down into the eyes.
Yeah.
The eyeglasses are going to deter it some, but not a lot.
Yeah, and you can contact Kurt's our guy. I love Kurt. He's a great guy, former law enforcement officer. Now he's got a less lethal shop in Southern California. So you can send a note to Kurt at ungun.com and ask him your questions about that. He's a great resource. He'll give you the straight scoop on that stuff. Buddy, we've got another question. What does insurance cover?
I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh at that, but it's truth. Insurance covers probably very little because if you do one thing out of line that doesn't comply with the standards, they're not going to cover you. They're not going to protect you. I don't care who you have. This is something you need to discuss with your insurance company, your agent. You need to have it in writing what you can and can't do to protect yourself. Because if you make a mistake on there, it's on you. You need to have some personal liability insurance. And even if you've done something that's out of line, you don't have any coverage. So that's my experience with it anyway. I know Joe has talked to some insurance agents. He's probably got some more information.
Yeah, I'm trying to look up the story, but it's been a while back. But we talked to an insurance agent, and that was very enlightening to me. It was 7 months ago. Let me see if I can get you the date here. It's called Is Your Security Team Covered? And we did that. It's been about 7 months ago. You can look that up on our YouTube, Church Security Answer Man, right here where you're watching. But when I talked to that insurance agent, that was one of the interesting things that I learned was unless you specifically talk about it with that insurance agent, it may not be covered. So you can talk about the security team in general. And I would propose to you that some of our churches are still not talking about the security team. They're getting insurance and they're not bringing up the security team. And so in that case, the security team's not covered. But even when you talk about it, and I'm going off of what I learned from this security person, or what I believe I learned, is that if you don't discuss it, it could not be covered. So if I discuss the security team, but I don't discuss the fact that they cover a gel, or that they carry asbatons, or they carry something else, if they use those tools, there's a chance they may not be covered in their protection of their liability. So one, you need to look at it and need to discuss it with your agent. So many times from talking to that agent, but also from what I hear, we try to avoid discussing a topic because we don't want it to cause issues. But if something happens around that area, then and we didn't discuss it, and there's an issue, then you're not covered. And as Buddy was alluding to, my feeling walking away from that video was, when it really gets bad, when things really hit the fan, if so to speak, there's a good chance that your church will be covered, but you will not be covered as a church security member. So you really got to discuss these things. You got to know. And when it comes down to it, I almost recommend, in fact, I do recommend, you get your own insurance. So if you really want to make sure that you're covered, get your own insurance. And I don't have necessarily a recommendation on that. I'm working on a couple shows on that. So, that you really got to watch out for yourself. Any other thoughts on that, buddy?
I've gone to my homeowner's insurance company and talked to them, and I was able to get a liability umbrella, and so that was easy to get. It's not real expensive. But here again, it's just going to matter what the conduct is and whether or not I file for them to cover me.
Yeah. And you better ask them, if you're getting an umbrella coverage personally, you better ask them, will this cover me at church doing volunteer security work if I hurt someone or hit someone, or what? You better ask them the details of those possibilities. Okay, any other questions? We're getting ready to wind up here. So if you got any questions, make sure you throw them in the comments. Joseph says he's a big fan of wearing low profile, clear eye protection at all times. And I know a lot of people that do that kind of thing. They wear their shooter's glasses. Bob says he uses U.S. Law Shield as an individual concealed carrier. And I hear things about that and other companies, and you just got to dig into it. And I appreciate that, Bob. Appreciate you mentioning that. So you got to dig into it, and don't just get what you think is a blanket protection or that you're covered. You got to ask questions of these insurance agents, because that's part of their industry, is navigating through liability. And if you haven't talked about it, then you might not be covered. So thanks again, Bob, for mentioning that. Buddy, I got one more question here, if nobody else pops one in. Do you have any comments on the use of tasers?
Not a whole lot. But here again, I just don't care to use tasers and any extra weapons or non-lethal type stuff. A taser, typically you're going to be able to pick up the older tasers, less expensive, but they're going to be bigger and bulkier. They're going to be harder to conceal, and you only have one cartridge in them. And so if you pull that cartridge out, replace it, the person you just hit with that taser, they may be incapacitated for a short bit of time, but they can get back up eventually. The only time I've seen those used working securities in crowd control and riot situations, and you just take it and you dry fire it, put it on people, but you've got to be real close, enough to touch them with that taser once you pull that cartridge off of it. I've seen guys go through 3 or 4 cartridges real quick, and then they're pretty much done unless they get close enough where they can use it. We just reach out and touch someone with it. but I'm not a big fan of it in a church setting.
Yeah, you know, and some of this depends on where you're at and that kind of thing. I agree with Buddy. I'm not a big fan of this stuff. I'm not a big fan of it because I'm in a little bit quieter community. We're getting busier. We're having more issues, but I haven't started adding tools because as soon as I add tools, I got to add all this litany of training, knowing use of force, knowing the tools, recertifications, all of those kind of things to cover our liability. So I just am not a big fan of pulling these things out or having them available to us. But I think the day is coming that more of you may need to do that. And you got to decide, meet with your leadership and decide what you need to do. You know, what tools. Certainly, we don't want to have no tools available and a gun. You know, I think that we've got to bridge that and decide, you know, is there any other tools? We're looking at the gel stuff now that it doesn't fog the whole church, so that way I have verbal communication, hands-on, and then I have a gel, and then I have firearms. So I have something else in the middle. That's the kind of stuff that we're thinking about. And so otherwise, you know, the liability and stuff is certainly a big issue for you. And where am I going to get the training, that kind of thing. Bob also mentioned the local PD. You know, what suggestions do they have? And also, you know, sometimes you might be able to get the local PD to help you with some training or help you find an expert that can help you with that training. Now, I want to suggest, as we're winding down here, I don't see any more questions. As we're winding down, I want to mention you can get a lot of information. There's a lot of good folks out there talking about church security stuff, but we do have resources for you that I certainly want to promote to you. And, you know, you can go to churchsecurityanswerman.com, churchsecurityanswerman.com, and we've got free information, paid information. It's just a hub of stuff there. There's even free stuff you can download right now to read or look at. And then one of those is a free training guide that lists out, I think it's currently 23 training videos that are free on our YouTube page that you can get right now and show to your team, or you can watch. But there's also courses on churchsecurityanswerman.com where you can go through the course and get a handout and get a certificate at the end. So you can put it in your personnel file or put it in the church file or however you want to do that. So we are one resource that's out there, and there's others that are good. And I also want to make sure that you know that we have our stuff out there as well. So any final thoughts, buddy, as we're closing up here?
Yeah, Joe has a lot of shorts out there with church security, and I use those a lot of times on training. I've got a group set up for our safety team, and I would just make a bulk mailing for those shorts. It just gives them for some training through the week.
Yeah, it's a great resource. I think Buddy just lost his internet, so just after there he is.
Hey, I'm back. I don't know about Joe, but I'm back. But guys, it's been great having y'all with us this week. I'm glad you participated, you put your input, and hope we touch base with you and answer the questions properly. We're available to you anytime. Just contact Joe at Church Security Answer Man. Be more than happy to help you out and give you a little assistance along the way. All right, guys, God bless. Y'all take care. I'm going to shut her down.
All right. Thanks, buddy. And thanks for watching us today. And anything we can do for you, send us a note through that churchsecurityanswerman.com. And again, thanks from all over the U.S., Canada. We appreciate you watching us. Thank you. Have a great week this week.